Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Wow. Oh, there it goes. We're ready. It's there. Can someone connect to that? Can you? Yeah, okay. I guess that's fine. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Scheduled Incarnations, text number 47. It's long. Shashvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shuddham Samam Sad Asatah Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Na Yatra Puru Karakavan Kriyarto Paramasya Pumso Prameti Yad Vidur Ajasra Sukham Vishokam Shashvat Prashantam Abhaya Pratibodha Matram Shuddham Samam Sarasataf Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Nayatra Purukarakavan Kriyarto Maya Paraiti Abhimukhi Cha Vilajamana Tadvai Param Bhagavatah Paramasya Pumso Prameti Yad Vidura Jasra Sukham Vishokam Shashvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shuddham Samam Sarasataf Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Nayatra Purukarakavan Kriyarto Maya Paraiti Abhimukhi Chavila Jamana Tadvai Param Bhagavatah Paramasya Pumso Brahmeti Yad Vidura Jasra Sukham Vishokam Shashvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram Shuddham Samam Sad Asataf Paramatma Tattvam Shabdo Nayatra Purukarakavan Kriyarto Maya Paraiti Abhimukhi Cha Vilajamana Tadvai Padam Bhagavatah Paramasya Pumso Prameti Yad Vidura Jasra Sukham Vishokam. Please repeat. Some water. Maya paraitye vimukhi chavila jamana. Tadvai param bhagavataf paramapsya pumso. Brahmeti yadvidur ajasrasakam vishokam. Mataji's. Shashvat prashantam abhayam pratibodhamatram. Shuddham samam sadasataf paramatma tadvam. Shabdo nayatra kurukara kavankriyarto. Maya paraiti bhimukhi chavilajamana. Tadvai param bhagavatav paramasya pumso. Brahmeti yadvidura jasrasakam vishokam. Shashvat prashantam abhayam pratibodhamatram. Shuddham samam sarasataf paramatma tadvam. Shabdo nayatra kurukaraka vankriyarto. Maya paraitya bhimukhi chavila jamana. Tadvai padam bhagavataf paramasya pumso. Brahmeti yadvidura jasrasakam vishokam. Shashvat, eternal. Prashantam, without disturbance. Abhayam, without fear. Pratibodhamatram, a consciousness opposed to the material counterpart. Shuddham, uncontaminated. Samam, without distinction. Asataha, of the cause and effect. Paramatma tattvam, the principle of primeval cause. Shabdaha, speculative sound. Na, not. Yatra, where there is. Purukarakavan, resulting in fruitive activity. Kriya artaha, for the matter of sacrifice. Maya, illusion. Paraiti, flies. Now flies away. Abhimukhi, in front of. Cha, also. Vilajamana, being ashamed of. Tat, that. Vai, is certainly. Padam, ultimate phase. Bhagavataha, of the personality of Godhead. Paramasya, of the Supreme. Pumsaha, of the person. Brahma, the Absolute. Iti, thus. Yat, which. Viduhu, known as. Ajasra, unlimited. Sukham, happiness. Vishokam, without grief. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. What is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the Supreme Enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and is fearless. He is completely conscious as opposed to matter. Uncontaminated and without distinctions, he is the primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitative activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. The Supreme Enjoyer, the personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman or Summum Bonum because of his being the supreme cause of all causes. The conception of impersonal Brahman realization is the first step, due to his distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the Absolute distinct from material variegatedness, just as light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in the light. This, the ultimate realization of Brahman, is the source of the Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum, or the ultimate source of everything. Therefore, meeting the personality of Godhead includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized at first in contrast with the material illusion. The personality of Godhead is the third step of Brahman realization. As explained in the first canto, one must understand all three features of the Absolute Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Pratibodhamatram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus, in the first realization of Brahman, there is the negation of such material miseries. And there is a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth and death, disease and old age. That is the primary conception of impersonal Brahman. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. The concept of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there is some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of limitations. When the personality of God is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he is the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities, because he is the supersoul or Paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. As such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken as we have experienced here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken. Thus, there is no grief and no fear. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities, by arrangements and sacrifices. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things. But this is not denial of the transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. Herein also is the same is affirmed in the statement that the Supreme Lord is pure, Shuddham. The word Shuddham indicates that the senses of the personality of Godhead are not made of the material elements. They are all transcendental, free from all contamination of material identification. And also, the liberated souls are not devoid of senses. Otherwise, there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous, unbroken joy. As such, all the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein, Sad Asataf Param. The illusory material energy cannot work there, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief, but here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. There is a distinct difference between material and spiritual senses, and one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of a material conception. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance. In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. In the material world, the senses are manipulated for individual and personal satisfaction, whereas in the spiritual world, the senses are properly used for the purpose for which they are originally meant, namely the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Such sensual activities are natural, and therefore sense gratification there is uninterrupted and unbroken by material contamination because the senses are spiritually purified. And such satisfaction of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. Since the activities are unlimited and constantly increasing, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Such happiness of transcendental quality is called Brahma Saukyam, which will be clearly described in the 5th canto. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshul Unmiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Nina Bhutili Swayamupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapara Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragana tam vitam tam jivam sadvaitam savadutam parijana saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivashakan Vitam Shahe Krishna Kuruna Sindhu Dina Pandu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Navostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hare Pare Vanchakapatu Beshta Kripasindu Bhibacha Pritanam Bhavane Bio Vaishnavi Bio Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putali Shmati Bhakti Vikasa Swamin Itinamane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putali Shmati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Itinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravandi Pisharne Nirvishesha Shunavali Pashchati Tishtarne Buddher Mahadbiri Mafpuro Vibor Nirmaya Shitya Amushi Purasha Bung Te Gunan Shodashatmaka Sonang Shishta Bhagavan Vasham Sime. Translation again, because that was a long purport. What is realized as the absolute Brahman, full of unlimited bliss, is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and is fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter. Uncontaminated and without distinctions, he is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Whoever is linked up here, you can pull up real quick 2:5:13. It's a very similar verse we've just maybe like a month or two ago, but within the Bhagavatam, it's coming close. 2:5:13. So you see this word, other one. Go back, yeah. This word, it comes actually. It's the only time I know, unless the conjugation is different. It comes in the Bhagavatam. Whoops. Sorry, Siri is hearing me. So, vilajamana. So, in other words, this means one who is ashamed. You can go down to the translation. I'll just read from there. This is Shukadeva Goswami replying to Maharaj Parikshit. He says, the illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position. But those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of it is I and it is mine. So, in today's verse, you can pull it up because I'll just go through it. 2:7:47. The same word comes. So many words come, and Srila Prabhupada, his purport is practically describing each and every single word individually. So this word vilajamana. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his energy Maya is ashamed to stand before him. That description is used. In other words, simply put, in simple terms, illusion doesn't exist in Krishna. Rather, it's external to Krishna. It's Krishna's. That's why. Wow, amazing. That's why we say it's Krishna's external energy, opposed to his internal energy. His internal energy is Satchidananda. It's of a different quality. So this is more of a philosophical point, and this verse itself is highly philosophical. I'll try to simplify it a little bit. But the point is made in so many different ways. This verse was quoted by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and afterwards he spoke, Krishna Surya Sam Maya Hoy Antakar, Jahan Krishna Tahan Nahi Mayar Adhikar. Famous verse, Srila Prabhupada put as the logo indirectly of his back to Godhead. Krishna is compared to sunshine, and Maya is compared to darkness. Wherever there is sunshine, there cannot be darkness. As soon as one takes to Krishna consciousness, the darkness of illusion, the influence of the external energy, will immediately vanish. So where there's Krishna, there's no question of Maya. Although, and so, not exactly, we see Vyasadeva, he saw Krishna, but he also saw Maya. But he saw Krishna distinct from Maya. Maya was in the background. So the two things aren't conflated. So this point is there, that Krishna, and Srila Prabhupada establishes, he makes this point basically throughout his purport. He makes three main points in the purport. He quotes this Vadanti tat tattva vedas, tattvam yaj jnanamadvanyam prameti paramad eti bhagavan eti shabdeti, because these words are coming in the Sanskrit. Paramatma Tattvam, and then Brahman, obviously, and then Bhagavataha, etc., are coming in the Sanskrit. And Srila Prabhupada is breaking down, as he's done before, the different phases of realization of Brahman, particularly, but specifically the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Second point he's making is that the living entities are by nature spirit, and they have spiritual senses, and they can engage in a relationship with this personality of God. And the third point he's making is that The Supreme Personality of Godhead, he himself has no material contamination. And he says this in so many different ways. He said, the verse itself, Shuddham Samam Asataf Paramatattvam, that, and Srila Prabhupada explains this, saying that the Supreme Lord, he has senses, but these senses aren't material senses. So many times he makes this point in the Bhagavatam. Already is the second canto, going on to the third, and Srila Prabhupada is hammering this point again and again and again. I was just looking in the 10th canto. I'll quote some verses from there. And even in the 10th canto, Srila Prabhupada is making the exact same point. He was saying, in some, not exactly related, but in some purport, he was saying that Lord Chaitanya is identical with Lord Krishna, and we shouldn't think that Lord Chaitanya accepted a material body when he came to this world. Elsewhere in the 10th canto, you will see Srila Prabhupada is quoting verses, seemingly basic verses, such as Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam, etc., like this, that it's presumed if we made it to the 10th canto, we should know these things, maybe not the Sanskrit, but at least the philosophy. But again and again, Srila Prabhupada is sticking to basic points of the philosophy. Not exactly basic, but Srila Prabhupada is making it basic. He's presenting it in an easy-to-understand form. But if you look at the Sanskrit itself, it's confusing in some ways and difficult to understand, just like if you take the translation here. So getting into this, the context of this verse we should remember because it's been a while. This verse was spoken by Brahma to Narada, his son, Narada Muni. When Narada put forth the question, I see his doubt to Lord Brahma. It seems like you are not the supreme all in all. It seems like there's another controller beyond you. And so Lord Brahma, he says, of course there's another controller beyond me. That's the Supreme Personality of God. And he gives this very long explanation. And again, he's circling back to this point, that the Supreme Personality of God, he's describing all these attributes of the Supreme Personality of God, beginning with Shashvat, that he's eternal. Whereas Lord Brahma, he lives only a limited span of life, something like, I don't know offhand, 200 trillion years, I think the number is given in one place, something like that, I forget exactly. And incredibly, to us, it seems like an eternity, but his life is limited. Similarly, to Lord Brahma, he is, by nature, he's peaceful, but of course, he's the predominating deity of the mode of passion, but he's it's described, Lord Brahma, amongst the living entities, he's Jivotama. He's the highest, the most pure, the most elevated living entity, literally the highest of all living entities. There's present within the material universe. But still, Lord Brahma, he has so many disturbances. He can't be said to be Prashanta, as the Supreme Personality of God is. It's completely without disturbance, Srila Prabhupada translates here. Lord Brahma, the demigods always come to him, the demons are terrorizing the universe. He gives some benediction to some demon, just like Hiranyakashipu, etc., like this, which causes a big ruckus in the universe. And so there's constantly, and then elsewhere within the Bhagavatam, I think Kalki Prabhu would know, is somewhere in the 4th canto, he comes to request some king to marry, and initially the king didn't want to marry. But you see, basically how Lord Brahma, he's having to get involved with the affairs of the material universe and sort things out more or less, both on a managerial scale and both on a scale of dealing with the miscreants and the problems of the demigods. And Lord Krishna also does this. He comes because he comes because of the prayers of Lord Brahma to come, because Lord Brahma prayed that the Lord would descend on this earth and rid the earth of all demonic influences, particularly Kamsa and his henchmen. But when he does so, Krishna isn't disturbed in mind by all these things. Lord Brahma is composed completely of intelligence, but Krishna is completely, the word here is used, Shuddham. He's completely pure. So Lord Brahma, he's composed of intelligence, but intelligence is of 3 types, materially speaking. Of course, there's Bhuti Yoga, there's completely, specifically there's one word here, Pratibodha Matram. There's intelligence that's completely spiritualized, but Lord Brahma's intelligence is contaminated by the mode of nature. Whereas the Supreme Lord, he's Shuddham, he's completely pure. So I'll just go say systematically through these qualities. So Shashvat, so he's eternal, so many different places. This is one of the first things we understand of Krishna. Even those who don't have any idea of God, they at least they can understand, or I don't know, some people are so dull-headed they can't understand God is eternal. At least for those who have some faith in God, they understand that God is eternal. But you see atheists, or not even atheists, more like skeptics, or those who just don't care. What's the word for that? Agnostics. Typically, they put forward this argument. If God caused everything, what caused God? They can't accommodate in their mind that there's something without a cause. They have no idea what is eternal. So Krishna is eternal. He's Shashvat. He's, at the same time, he's eternal, but Srila Prabhu would make the point, he's also the youngest. He's Navayovanam. How does that begin? Do you know that? I'm just missing the first word of the Brahma Samhita. Navayovanam cha videshu durlabha madurlabha matma bhakto shuramis. How does that begin? Advaitam achutam anadi ananta rupam adya purana purusham navayovanam cha. So he's Puranam, he's the oldest of all living entities. Not living entities, he's the oldest living being. But at the same time, he's the youngest. He's the youngest of them all. Srila Prabhupada would constantly make the point. And simultaneously, he's Prashantam, as I was saying. He's completely peaceful. There are people within this world we may regard as peaceful, but actually they're completely disturbed. Just like I was saying, Lord Brahma, Jivotama, the highest living entity, he's still disturbed by so many different influences. So similarly, too, we may see, just like sometimes you see these Tibetan Buddhist monks on the street, and they have the whole garb, and they have their shaved heads. Even too, I mean, you'll see, not here in America, but in India, they're Mayavadis, etc. like this. And presumably, even if they've attained a state of self-realization, at least the version is there, they have attained mental peace. If you've merged into Brahman, one of the symptoms is Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma. Prashanta, he's peaceful. But still, there's so many issues there. But even if you take it they're peaceful, these individuals who have achieved liberation are peaceful. Krishna is the supreme peaceful. He's more peaceful than them. He's the Lord of all those who are peaceful. Kunti prays, Namo Kinchana Vittaya, Nivrita Gunavrite, Atma Ramaya Shantaya, Kaivalya Patiye Namaha. So he's Patihi. He is the Lord of all those monists who have attained self-satisfaction. He's Shantaya. He's completely peaceful. So among the peaceful, he's the Lord of the peaceful. Simultaneously, it's said here, he's Abhayam within the Sanskrit. He's fearless. This comes many times throughout the Bhagavatam. He's fearless, and he bestows fearlessness to his devotees. Abhayam Atmani Puishta Ankshrom. We pray to Lord Nrsimhadev that he bestow unto us fearlessness. By approaching him, we can become free from fear. Only the devotees have access to this privilege. Not even the demigods. Prahlad Maharaj, he prays. I can't recall the Sanskrit, but he prays that, my dear Lord Nrsimhadev, we're not at all like these demigods, and he marks that we are not afraid of this form you're showing. All the demigods, when Lord Nrsimhadev exhibited his transcendental beautiful form, the demigods, beginning with Lord Brahma, were afraid to approach him. But Prahlad Maharaj, being a pure devotee, he was completely devoid of any fear. Not just when Nrsimhadev exhibited himself, even before that, when Hiranyakashipu and his minions were terrorizing Prahlad, at no point did he demonstrate any sense of fear. This comes because he's taken shelter at the lotus feet of he who is the source of all fearlessness. Apayacharanaravindaya. So, but at the same time, amazingly, a higher, not exactly higher, but different understanding is that although the Lord is fearless, he's feared by fear personified, but at the same time he exhibits fear. Kunti also prays famously, Gopi adadid vaikrita gasidhamatavad, yate dashashu kalilanjana sambramaksham, Vaktram niniya bhayabhavanayastitya samam vimohiti pir apiyad pipeti. So this Vaktram niniya bhayabhavanaya. Although Krishna is the source of all fearlessness, he's literally feared by fear itself, fear personified. At the same time, Krishna, he's running away in fear from Mother Yashoda. Srila Prabhupada gives the translation. My dear Krishna, Yashoda took a rope to bind you when he committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears. which wash the mascara from your eyes. And you were afraid, though fear personified is afraid of you. The sight is bewildering to me. So at the same time, all contradictory qualities are reconciled in Krishna. They exist in Krishna. He's the oldest and he's the youngest. Materially, it doesn't make sense. He is completely fearless. But at the same time, we can see there's fear in him, fear of Mother Yashoda. He is completely peaceful. But at the same time, he seemingly becomes disturbed just throughout his Leela, just as Maharaj was mentioning earlier, when the washerman refused to give him clothes, Krishna immediately killed him. He seemed to be, from a material external point of view, it seems as if Krishna is disturbed by the washerman's arrogance or refusal to give such things. So these qualities, these contradictory qualities, they exist in Krishna. Although at the same time, the next point is that they're completely pure, Shuddham. I was touching on this a little bit. So, Shuddham, Krishna is pure. What does this pureness mean? More or less, pureness means he's not contaminated by the modes of material nature. We hear this, Srila Prabhupada makes this point 4 or 5 times in this purport. What is speak throughout the Gita, what is speak throughout the Bhagavatam. Even Chaitanya Charitamrita, the same point is coming again and again and again. Because it's a very large misconception, actually. It's the basis of Mayavad philosophy. Basically, pureness means, to understand pureness, we can understand dirtiness. What does dirtiness mean? Dirtiness means this material world. Srila Prabhupada, he would remark, quoting his own spiritual master, is not a place fit for a gentleman. Elsewhere, in one purport, Srila Prabhupada refers to the filthy entanglement of material life. So this material world is very filthy, and association with this material world itself is contaminating. Srila Prabhupada, near the end of his manifest pastimes, he lamented, of course in his own humility, he lamented that this material world is such a place that even by its influences, even pure devotees, I'm paraphrasing what he's saying, but due to the influence of the material world, I've committed so many offenses. He was making the point that even the material world is so contaminating that even pure devotees may exhibit some offense like this. Of course, philosophically, it's not the case, and Srila Prabhupada is speaking it in his humility, but the point is there that the material world itself and its association is contaminating. So Krishna doesn't have anything to do with this. He says that, what is that? Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtinam matstani sarva bhutani nacham tesh avastitaha. That the material, that he's situated within all living beings, but at the same time, he is aloof from the material creation. Krishna, he creates this material world, and his material energy is there, but at the same time, Srila Prabhupada uses this word, separated material energies. It's significant, it's not just jargon. It's specifically separated from Krishna because Krishna doesn't come into contact with the material energy. Unlike, for example, Lord Shiva, who comes into contact with the material energy and is therefore, I don't know if contaminated is necessarily the word, but he takes on, of course, there's Sada Shiva, who is completely pure, but the Shiva of this material world who is involved with the creation, etc., like that, he is associated with the qualities of the material world. But Krishna, even though he's the source of the material world, he has no connection with it. Therefore, he's completely pure. It was Akrura who prayed to Krishna, Nama Krishnaya Shuddhaya, Brahmane Paramatmane, Yogeshwaraya Yogaya, Dvamaham Sharanam Gata. That Krishna, I'm offering my obeisances to you, the most completely pure, he who is the master of all yogic powers. There are so many different prayers throughout the Bhagavatam, so many different descriptions of Lord Krishna as being describing his purity. In the 10th canto, or the 4th canto, famous verse Srila Prabhupada quote often, Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam, that the Supreme Lord he's Shuddha Sattva. Srila Prabhupada would often quote this verse making this point, that he's of the mode of completely uncontaminated goodness. The mode of goodness of this material world, it has a binding effect. Namely, it conditions one to a sense of happiness, to a sense of knowledge, to a sense of prosperity, etc. But this Vasudeva, this Sattvam Vishuddham, this completely purified mode of goodness, it is, more or less the prototype of this perverted mode of goodness of this material world. And Krishna is completely composed of this, the Sattvam Vishuddham. Elsewhere, in the 10th canto, the demigods pray, Sattvam Vishuddham Shrayate Bhavan Stito Sharirinam Shrayupayanam Vapuhu. That the Lord accepts a form of Sattvam Vishuddham, a mode of completely purified goodness, for the benefit of the living entities in this world. And he comes to this world to teach different things, Veda, Kriya, Yoga, Tapa, Samadhi, Bis, etc. like this, different processes of self-realization. And they continue on, Sattvam Nachadhaturidam Nijam Bhavid, Vijnanam Vijnana Pitaba Marjanam, Guna Prakashir Anumiyate Bhavan, Prakashate Yasya Shayena Vaganaha. The demigods further pray to Krishna that if you weren't fully transcendental, composed of this completely pure mode of goodness, it would be impossible to understand what is spirit and what is matter. O Lord, the cause of all causes, if your transcendental body were not beyond the modes of material nature, one cannot understand the difference between matter and transcendence. Only by your presence can one understand the transcendental nature of your lordship, who are the controller of material nature. Your transcendental nature is very difficult to understand unless one is influenced by the presence of your transcendental form. So without Krishna's exhibition of his form, one can't even begin to approach the platform of Brahman, actually. There will be no idea of what is spirit or what is matter. So Lord, Srila Prabhupada, he says, commenting in the purport of this verse, that, he's breaking it down. So the demigods, they use this word, Vijnana and Jnana and Vijnana. Srila Prabhupada is explaining that Vijnana is realized knowledge, experienced knowledge. So one can speculate that there may be impersonal Brahman and even slightly come to that platform, although not exactly, it's not permanent. But this Vijnanam, it wouldn't be possible to attain had Krishna not come and exhibited his pure form. And that form wasn't completely pure. So anyway, Srila Prabhupada says, Vijnana means transcendental knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vijnana is also experienced knowledge. Transcendental knowledge has to be accepted by the descending process of disciplic succession as Brahma presents the knowledge of Krishna in the Brahma Samhita. Brahma Samhita is Vijnana as realized by Brahma's transcendental experience. And in that way, he presented the form and the pastimes of Krishna in the transcendental abode. And Srila Prabhupada continues on like this, but the same thing in this verse is the exact same thing. What we're hearing today, the Shashvat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodha Matram, etc., and what we've heard previously in this chapter, Lord Brahma describing so many different incarnations of the Lord, is not something dry. Although Lord Brahma, he's heard the Vedas, he has this knowledge, he has the jnana, what he's speaking is vijnana, realization. And for those avatars who have yet to, because for most of these avatars, he was there for them. And for those who have yet to come, he's speaking, for those who have yet to come, he's speaking his jnana, etc., like this. His knowledge of Shastra, his knowledge of the Vedas. But these descriptions specifically that he's giving here, he's void of all disturbances and is fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter. Brahma is speaking this, we have to keep in mind, because he's seeing Krishna. Because he's seeing Krishna, he can tell these things to others. And consequently, those who hear these words of Brahma and repeat them to others, all of this constitutes the same vijnana that the Lord Brahma is giving. Otherwise, we can't say these things. Just like I was mentioning, there's these foolish people who can't even accommodate the idea that God is without a cause. That's because they can't, people may be able to speak, they're limited by their own intellect, more or less. Some people may be a little more intelligent and cultivate some jnana that, okay, there's some entity that exists that's without a cause, that's eternal. But they can't come to this point of realizing that the Supreme Lord is completely peaceful, that he's completely without material distinction, that he has a spiritual, and specifically the spiritual body. Srila Prabhupada is making the point in the purport that the Lord has senses, but they're not material senses. They're completely transcendental senses. So to understand all this, we have to hear from this vijnana. We have to have this knowledge coming down from Lord Brahma. Just as Narada Muni, Of course, this is Lila, but Narada Muni is starting to understand these things, that there's a controller beyond Lord Brahma, because Lord Brahma is enlightening Narada Muni. So if we hear in this way, it's very easy. Otherwise, if we go on speculating, it's very, very difficult. Prahlad Maharaj, he praised the Lord Nrsimhadev in the 7th canto. Soham priyasa suridaf paradevataya, lila katastava nrsimha vrinchakitaha, anjas didarme anugranan guna vipramukto durgani te pada yugale hamsa sangaha. O my Lord Nrsimhadev, I pray that I may always be associated in your, literally, hamsa sangaha, the association of swan-like devotees. Please always allow me to exist in this association and hear and chant about your glories, anjastitarmi anugranan guna vipramukto, following in the line of unjust, following in the line of Lord Brahma. By doing so, by hearing and chanting about the glories of Krishna in the line of Lord Brahma, one can easily, he says here, anugranan guna vipramukto. He can cross over these contaminating, dirty gunas, these contaminating qualities of material nature very, very easily. Otherwise, one would take even if one takes a great deal of difficulty and tries to speculate for years on end, he can't overcome the modes of material nature. Just as the demigods pray in the 10th canto, famously, Yene Ravindakshivi Muktamanyas, Yene Ravindakshivi Muktamanyas Tvayastabhavad Avishudha Buddhiyaha. Their intelligence, they remain impure. So they remain contaminated. So the only way to ourselves become pure and approach is by approaching the Supreme Pure, but it's done so by following the disciplic succession. His point is reiterated, Krishna being the Supreme Pure, just like in the Gita we have Param Parama Param Dham, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, that you are the Supreme Pure. Well, different translations, you are either the Supreme Purifier, the 1972, or you are the Supreme Pure in the current edition of the Gita. But the point is there, regardless, Krishna is the Supreme Pure. By associating with the Supreme Pure, we also become purified. Om Pavitra Pavitrova Sarvastam Gato Piva Yah Smarat Pundarikaksham Sa Bahya Tarasuchihi. I'm sorry, I haven't learned that one yet. Basically, more or less the translation, the purport of that is, whether one is pure or impure, if one remembers Vishnu, then automatically, instantly, he becomes purified. So this point is there, that the Lord is the Supreme Pure, and by remembering Him, we also become purified. And then there's this point, Pratibodha Matram, Srila Prabhupada quotes here, and he has a whole paragraph describing this. He says, Pratibodha Matram, literally it means, Pratibodha means knowledge or consciousness. You can take it like that. You could take it as completely purified consciousness. And Matram means a measurement of something, one measurement of something. So literally what is being said here is Pratibodha Matram, he's only composed of completely purified consciousness. In him exists no tinge of material qualities. So Srila Prabhupada says, Pratibodha Matram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus, in the first realization of Brahman, there is negation of material miseries, and there is a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pains of birth, death, disease, and old age. This is the primary conception of Brahman. Not just Brahman, of course, this is also there when Bhagavan is realized. So, these faults of material nature, birth, death, Janma, Mritu, Jara, Vyadhi, etc., they don't exist at all. And what to speak of these, any faults of material nature, they don't exist in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Srila Prabhupada goes on, he makes so many different points in this purport. I'll just kind of gloss over it a little bit. Srila Prabhupada, he makes the point that the Supreme Lord is the supreme soul of everything. And therefore, in the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. And he makes the point of a father's affection to a son. But he says, let's see. When the personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because the reality of the affectionate relation, because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. So in just simpler terms, Srila Prabhupada is saying that because Krishna is the soul of our soul, naturally, although we may share affection for people for other living entities in this world because of some bodily affection. We may be friends with someone. More intimately, we may have affection for our family because we're physically connected to them with our body. Or we may be married to somebody and have some association with them like that. But more dear to us, more dear to the soul than all of these material relationships, which are ultimately temporary, is the eternal relationship that we have with Krishna. Because Krishna is the soul of our soul. I was trying to find somewhere in the 10th canto. I couldn't find it. I believe it comes around the Brahma Vimohan Lila, when Lord Brahma stole the cowherd boys. And I forget who was asking what, but the question was raised, how is it that Krishna was how is it that the cowherd men of Vrindavan were more affectionate to Krishna, who had expanded himself as the different gopas, and the cows were more affectionate to their calves, more affectionate to Krishna, who had expanded himself, than their own children. And the point is made there, if I'm remembering correctly, is that this is so because Krishna is the soul of all souls. The most dear thing to everybody in this world, more dear than one's even father, mother, family, lover, etc., is one's own self himself. Therefore, you see, the relationships in this world, ultimately, they're self-satisfying, they're self-gratifying. Srila Prabhu will make this point. Because ultimately, everybody's looking out for his own self-interest. Why is he doing that? Because of all living entities, the living entity loves himself the most. He cares for himself the most. And even more than that is that he loves what the Atma, literally, to use the terms that are given there, the Atma, I forget the exact Sanskrit term that's used there, but Lord Krishna is the Atma of the Atma. He's the self of our very selves. Therefore, even more dear to us than ourselves is Krishna. Naturally. It's not something artificial. It's not something that has to be just like sometimes you see, just like in the material world, if there's a limited stock of some supply, say there's only so much of a certain sweet, and we may undergo the austerity of sacrificing our share of the sweet to give to somebody else. So we may do so out of social convention or due to some relationship, but there's a feeling in the heart still that I want to eat that sweet, is it not? That's there. No matter how much you love somebody, there's a tinge of selfishness there because it's natural, because we love ourselves. But there is no such tinge when it comes to loving Krishna. It's completely uncontaminated. Therefore, you see in the past Krishna Lila, so many devotees of Krishna who are taking the effort, the gopis, they abandon their mothers, their fathers, even their social position to go to dance with Krishna in the Rasa Lila at midnight. What to speak of that? Even Srila Prabhupada, he went through so many difficulties just for the sake of Krishna, because he loved Krishna. So these things, it's not that love, it's so, what is that? Therefore, Srila Prabhupada is using this language, that this affection becomes manifest in the fullest extent. And it's affection without any tinge of selfishness. Is completely pure love of Godhead. We use this term, love of Godhead, prema, unconditional love, we'll use this term, but this is what unconditional love actually means. We don't have any experience of it in the material world. Srila Prabhupada would say the closest you see is that of a mother towards their child. They'll sacrifice so much for their child, but even then, at the end, you'll see the mother is still thinking, there's so much difficulty I have to go through to take care of this child. It may not be in the forefront, but in the back of the mind it's there. But there's no such consideration when it comes to Krishna. So this is the point. So Srila Prabhupada uses this term. He is not the object of affection, of material tinges of body and mind, but he is the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities, because he is the super soul, or Paramatma, within everyone's heart. He's the soul of the soul. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. So, succinctly, that's the point Srila Prabhupada is making there. Then, Srila Prabhupada further makes the point that he goes on and explains further, about, again, elaborating on this Vedanti Tattva Vedas, how the Supreme Lord, there is Paramatma Tattva, as is explained here, and then there's Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, the Upanishads and Vedic literature, they deal more with negation. But here we see in the Bhagavatam, actually from the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, the Supreme, actually even before the first verse, the invocation of the Bhagavatam, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, immediately from the beginning, there's quality given. There's name given. This Vasudeva, this name of Krishna is immediately there in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. So many qualities are described, again, following in the first verse, that he is Janmadhyasya Itonevalyad Itarita Shtartesh Abhigya Swarat. He's Abhigya, he's Swarat. He is, meaning he's completely cognizant. He's free from the tinges of material contamination. He's the source of the material and spiritual worlds. That's Srila Prabhupada's rendition. Other renditions, if you look at the Acharyas, so many different things are there, actually. The first verse can further describe Lord Nrsimhadev. It describes the conjugal pastimes of Lord Krishna, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's rendition of it. The Adi Ras, Srila Prabhupada comments in his purport to that first verse. So from the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, the point I'm making is that immediately we're given knowledge about Krishna. None of this, although this negation is also there, we see sometimes in the Bhagavatam, time and time again, the form of Krishna is established. And this completely uncontaminated nature of the Lord is established again and again and again. And Srila Prabhupada, he goes on to say, he makes this point, and that comes at the end of the Sanskrit, that ajasara sukham vishokam, that this, or the Sanskrit itself, ajasara sukham, that unlimited happiness exists within Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada quotes here, Brahmasokyam. Well, he says, he has a few paragraphs describing this actually. He says that as such, there's an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced in this material world. In this material world, the relationships are broken eventually, whether it be through divorce, disagreement, or death. The relations of this material world, they have a beginning, they have an end. And then consequently, the happiness we derive from these relationships also have a beginning and end. But the happiness that derived from the relationship with Krishna has no end. It's ever increasing. And another important point that Srila Prabhupada makes here, I'm trying to skim over a lot of the details Srila Prabhupada is giving, but he says, and such satisfaction of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. So it's a very important point. Srila Prabhupada makes it later in the Bhagavatam, but I think he makes it in the Krishna book as well. But it's an important point to understand that by, more or less in simple terms, when Krishna becomes happy, we can, as part and parcels of Krishna, we can share in Krishna's happiness. And we become is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. So we share in Krishna's happiness. Krishna, by his mercy, when he becomes pleased, he gives us also his happiness. So by sacrificing for Krishna's sake, we don't become the loser in any sense of the term. We don't lose out on anything. Sometimes the conception is there that if I give everything to Krishna, what will be left from me? What about my happiness? Therefore, people, even devotees, they will approach Krishna with some desire, for some fulfillment of desire. Why do we want some desire fulfilled? Because more or less we're scared we'll be unhappy. There will be a lack of some sort of completeness or satisfaction in Krishna consciousness, a lack of something in Krishna consciousness. But Krishna, when he's satisfied fully, he gives us. Well, he's already complete in himself. But when we try to satisfy Krishna, he allows us to also enjoy that happiness he's relishing himself. It's not that we have to extraneously endeavor to satisfy our own senses. Rather, Krishna will completely take care of that for us. So I don't want to go so long, and I've skimmed over a lot. Srila Prabhupada makes final point in the purport, but it's long, and I don't want to read line by line. So I'll just go and end my class there and open it for any comments or questions or additions anybody may have at this point. Anything from the men? Call, maybe. No, nothing. Nothing in WhatsApp. So, for the Matajis, any questions? Yes.
Being due to soul and how that's based off of seeing Krishna and everything. And so when it comes to the different, like, I guess, layers of relationships that we have in regards to like intimacy, is that based off of the material identifications with the body?
Meaning like intimacy, meaning like within like mother versus like lover, etc., like that.
Right.
More or less, yeah. Because I mean, yeah, exactly. It is. It's based off the body, which is material. So naturally, all those relationships that we share, they, if not exactly the body, but material conditions, more or less, succinctly put. It's just like, you can only be so, at least materially speaking, we may have so many friends, but like generally, of course, Kali Yuga, degradation and things, but generally speaking, the parent, even if all your friends abandon you, your parents will always be there for you, generally speaking, because, that affection is there. Why is that affection there? Because of the bodily relationship like that. So that intimacy, although externally it may appear like, because there's like love and trust and a sharing of feelings, ultimately what it boils down to, at least in that relationship, is that because one is the son or daughter of somebody else, related bodily like that, there's greater intimacy like that. So more or less it boils down to that.
So then when we're dealing with like recognizing Krishna as being the soul of the soul,
Mm-hmm.
I know in Bhagavad Gita, I'm not so well versed in all of it, but multiple times it says like the yogi who's able to see me in every living being.
Exactly.
Does that make the relationship then spiritual if we're recognizing the person not as, this is my mother or my father, but like recognizing Krishna within that individual?
Well, it's just like, yeah, succinctly put, yes, because material, and one definition of matter is seeing things in forgetfulness of Krishna. So it's just like, devotees, we also have, even Vaishnava families, who are from their beginning, from their entrance into this world, they also have a family, and they're, materially they may be related, but it's not that, how to say, just because you may share a material relationship with somebody doesn't mean this relationship can't be spiritual. Does that make sense? It's just like a devotee, just for example, Atharva, okay, good example. His father is Abhiram Saka Prabhu. So materially, he's his father, but at the same time, they have a spiritual relationship. The relationship isn't just mundane because they're both Vaishnavas and he's training his son to be a Vaishnava. So there's a spiritual relationship there. So similarly too, seeing Krishna and all living beings, that's there. And actually, we offer respect to all living beings because principally it's stated in the, fourth canto, because Krishna is there within all living beings. I'm trying to remember the point. It's escaping my mind. It's made about Lord Shiva and Daksha, but I'm just forgetting the details. But the point there is that we establish relationships, and we're kind, respectful, etc. of all living beings because the Paramatma is residing there like that. So just some different aspects of, is that like kind of like solving it?
And then I just had a more technical question about Lord Brahma.
Yeah.
Understanding like him being like just composed of intelligence, and then also if you could share what those three different types of intelligence were.
Oh, three different types of intelligence. That's there in the Bhagavad Gita. Just simply put, intelligence and motive, passion and goodness and ignorance. So Lord Brahma, he's, as I was mentioning, he's the presiding deity of Rajas, but at the same time, we see throughout the Bhagavatam, he's influenced by material qualities, just like he was brought to anger when the four Kumaras refused to beget progeny. So similar to, there's the story of Bhrigu Muni, how what did he do? He failed to offer him pleasing words, or he failed to offer respect to Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma, he became angry within the mind. Now anger is, according to the Bhagavad Gita, is a symptom of the motive, is a tamasic quality. Tamasic quality is the exhibition of the motive ignorance. So Lord Brahma, of course, he's our Sampradaya Acharya, a completely pure devotee. But at the same time, constitutionally, the post of Lord Brahma, he's subject to waiver. We understand. He's not completely, it's just like we were all once Lord Brahma, but because our intelligence, elaboration is that. Is that okay? Has that addressed like other points? Okay. You wanted to add something, Janish, bro?
Without
Krishna.
knowledge of Krishna, right? Just a personal reflection. First coming to Krishna consciousness, I'd never heard of such a distinction between, that there's such a difference between material energy and spiritual energy. Sort of like a Mayavad conception that everything is one, everything is spirit ultimately. Ultimately it is spirit, but that's not the right understanding. So yeah, it's just a little personal reflection on that. And we have these atheists or agnostics, skeptics that think that Krishna does not exist, or Krishna doesn't have a form, God doesn't have a form. And they think this way because their whole conception of form is a material.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada was making the point, that purport about the senses at least, just because, well, I forget the words he was using, but he shouldn't misapply a material conception to spiritual reality, yeah.
And this is something I told you like a week ago maybe. This is something I read in the 6th canto. This is in the, is it called the Hamsaguhya?
Hamsaguhya prayers, yeah.
Hamsaguhya prayers, spoken by Prajapati Daksha. Somewhere in the purports in there, Srila Prabhupada mentions that, so these atheists, they have the conception that God doesn't have a form. As devotees, we also have the same conception because it's the understanding that God doesn't have a material form. So those two understandings are actually the same, the devotee's understanding and the atheist's understanding, that the Lord doesn't have a form.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same understanding. We agree with them on that, but they don't have the
positive alternative, yeah.
Yeah, the alternative. They don't have the understanding of God's transcendental form and transcendental qualities.
It's just like the same thing, the Mayavadis, they also come to the point of, they come to the wrong conclusion because of that. But the point there in the verse, without knowledge of Krishna's form, Krishna didn't come, if you don't have knowledge from Krishna's descent. Like that. Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that some people think of God as an old man sitting on a cloud, or as a very old man with a long beard, he says. And that's due to incomplete knowledge. They don't have vijnana of what is God, like that. So.
Hare Krishna. So, love for Krishna. You know, for us to obtain more love for Krishna is also like to reside in devotional service. So the more devotional service you do, you know, you obtain more love for Krishna in that way. But for Christians and like for Muslims or people in other religions, like how would they ever get more love of God if they never take up the way of devotional service?
Oh, there's a big problem, huh? How do you know who they are? I don't know. It's possible, I mean, of Srila Prabhupada, when he was given a description of St. Francis, of Augustine, he said, of course he didn't particularly study his teachings, some disciple was just narrating some passages that all living. He said something that all living entities are my brother, and Srila Prabhupada said, yes, he's God conscious. That's God consciousness. It's possible, but at the same time, you have to have knowledge of who you're. There has to be not for love to be there. There's Bhagavan, Bhakti, and Bhakta. Without a full conception of who is Bhagavan, you can't. You can. Therefore, in this regard, I kind of prefer Vishnu John Swami's explanation of these processes. Is that these other processes of religion, more or less, they just maintain somebody, and some quality of material nature, a higher quality of material nature, at least better than being atheistic, until the point that can take up Krishna consciousness. Because ultimately, to attain full love of God means Krishna prema, right? We don't say, we're not what's the word for that? So accommodating, so non-sectarian that will push Krishna out of the picture. Because we know Krishna is God, the ultimate form of Krishna is God. There's other forms, there's Rama, etc. like that, but at least you have to have a form. You know, these religions, they have no idea of a form. So it's like they may be doing something on a preliminary scale. Something is there, there's some idea. But even then, it's like mainly, even the worship they're doing so because of out of their own self-satisfaction. Like I was speaking, there's no idea of actual love. They talk about love, but then they go and they pray to God, please, cure my relative, please give me money, this and that, etc. like this. And it's more or less it's something, it's maintaining them, but it won't necessarily, how most people practice it in the world today and what it's become, it won't lead directly to love of God.
Just a little side comment on that. But people may proclaim to have love of God, but this love of God is just part of their false ego.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes like within ISKCON. It could be the same. Anybody with a false ego could identify with loving God.
Mm-hmm. So I only have 2 minutes. I want to see because I went over here and came back. So the Mahajis have anything else? The other Mahajis? Question. Okay, Ram Das.
Hare Krishna. I was trying to understand, it's given the detail that Maya, she's ashamed.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. But when you go more deeper into the Bhagavatam, it's giving the detail that Maya is the only difference is between the way you serve.
You hold it.
How you serve, basically.
Yeah.
That determine whether that Maya is
Yeah, that's there, but there's go on.
And then you also have where Krishna is given the detail in Bhagavatam that his sister is also in control of Maya when she came in the birth. So in the spiritual world, Maya is there. I mean, how is she not facing Krishna? Also is given the detail where Maya is in the back.
You could take it like that, but what's being described is a little bit different. Just like the 2.5.13 is describing that the external energy of the Lord is afraid to stand before him. Because and this is the same external energy that Vyasadeva saw in his trance. When he saw Krishna and he saw the external energy. So that's specifically this external aspect. Of course, sometimes and Srila Prabhupada describes, there's the energy of Krishna. You can take it as Yoga Maya and Maya. Or Mahamaya, Yoga Maya, the two aspects, just like heating and cold, are two aspects of HVAC, or energy, two aspects of energy, I guess you could take it. But at the same time, there's a distinction. So this external energy, that's what's being described as being afraid, who's behind Krishna, and is ashamed to stand before him, if you see these descriptions. Because she's outside Krishna. She's existing outside Krishna. And this Mahamaya has no entrance within Krishna. Therefore, you see, there's as I was quoting, there's no tinge of material contamination within Krishna. But his internal energy, therefore, is within Krishna. He's just like the word is there used, the very word internal energy, because it's within Krishna, etc. like that. So, but specifically, this Mahamaya is what we're talking about. We're not talking about Yogamaya here. On a higher level, you can take them as one, but there's still a distinction like that.
It only becomes distinct anyway.
Okay, I'm out of time. So Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpa tarubhascha, kripa sindhu